message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello and welcome to The Evolution of Now. I am your wonderful main host for today, Michael. And with me I have my beautiful co-host, Bree. Hey,
Hello.
Bree. And we have Chris. Morning, Chris.
What's going on? How's everyone doing today?
How are you fine folks doing today? I said it first.
Haha.
Uh-huh.
We're doing okay.
Have we had a lot of tornadoes over in Iowa?
Yeah, we're all right. We had apparently 27 confirmed tornadoes yesterday.
Well, you never guess this, but there's a hosepipe ban on in the northwest of England right now, which is weird because we're one of the wettest parts of England, and England's kind of a wet country.
Yeah, it was the tornado. Actually, the first sighted tornado was actually like really close to where my parents live. So that was fun.
You had a few injuries, but no deaths out there. How are things over in Jersey?
Most of the injuries was at the Vermeer plant in Pella. So
how are things over in New Jersey, Chris?
Knows what that is.
Oh, wonderful. There was actually, they just reopened the beaches because they had to clean them up because a bunch of syringes and stuff came over from New York City. It was awesome. So that happened.
Okay.
Yeah. New Jersey's a beautiful place, guys.
You should visit. Try the beaches. Lovely beaches.
The best beaches. Big league.
Do you have any news stories you want to get to?
Oh, well, about those tornado storms. So it hit 3 towns in Iowa, one of which is Bondurant, which is real close to where my parents live.
All 3 of the towns in Iowa, yes.
No, it's not. But it destroyed about 5 homes in Bondurant. The Vermeer plant got hit pretty bad, about 7 buildings destroyed. And 7 people were injured and sent to the hospital. And then over in Marshalltown, which is not too far from where my grandparents used to live, and a lot of my dad's family lives over in that area, their 132-year-old courthouse was severely damaged, and their downtown pretty much wiped out.
Now, as an English person, I hear 132 years and I think, that's a fairly new build then.
You're horrible.
It's pretty amazing that that building was able to withstand 132 years of crazy amounts of tornadoes, because apparently they have like 20-something a day, right, over there?
No. We do get the 4th most tornadoes in the country, actually, in the United States, in Iowa.
Oh, is that per land area or is that state?
Per year. State-wise.
Okay. Because
Texas and Oklahoma are like in the top 2 positions. I can't remember which one's first. I mean, Texas is huge, so I mean.
Yeah, I was going to say they're also a lot bigger land area wise.
I think Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and then Iowa. I think that's the order, but I'm not sure.
We'll
Basically,
take your word on it.
If you're going to live in Oklahoma, you're going to want to know where your tornado shelter is, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Screw that. Welcome to America. Even the sky thinks you're an asshole.
Well, the thing is, with tornadoes, it's pretty hit or miss. Like, there's a pretty good chance that you're not actually going to get hit by one, even if there's one in your area. Like, so for example, there was that tornado that hit Bondurant. My parents don't live very far from there, but Bondurant, they have like a couple thousand people living there. I'm not even sure how many people. It keeps growing. The developers keep building houses and people keep moving there for some reason. And I say that as someone who went to that school district. I don't know why anyone would want to live in Bondurant. But only 5 houses were destroyed. So
it's sort of like...
From what I understand about tornadoes is everything under it is screwed. But if you're not directly under it, then you probably get away with a little bit of shrapnel.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a pencil right across a piece of paper. There's going to be wide areas of paper you're not going to hit with a pencil, that are going to be completely unaffected.
You can very easily live in Tornado Alley your entire life and never get hit by a tornado.
Well, that building, like you
never
said,
suffer any major
130
damage.
something years without being hit. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems crazy, but
Yep,
yeah.
and then it was just the cupola that got knocked off, which was fucking huge. But I think it landed on a vehicle.
Ouch.
Yeah. But speaking of natural disasters,
Trump? Wait. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
no,
not a
and
natural disaster.
volcanoes. Kilauea is still erupting in Hawaii. And so now they're having what's called Pele's hair accumulating and being spread across the wind. Pele's hair is strands of harmful volcanic glass. Yeah, so
Think of it
Sounds
like
wonderful.
asbestos
yeah,
or fiberglass. Horrible.
very thin pieces of glass, and they can blow around in the wind and end up in the water. They could do a lot of damage because, think about it, inhaling glass.
Yeah. Same with like fiberglass,
they,
like you're saying. Yeah, you don't want
it gets
to. You don't want
if
to
it
work
gets
with
into your lungs,
fiberglass unless
just
you have
tears
like a
your lungs
mask
up.
on.
Yeah, so I mean, and
Sorry, we were
it's-
talking at the same time.
Yeah, so basically, apparently Kilauea has already destroyed more than 600 homes since May. So yeah,
Lovely.
so compare 27 tornadoes in Iowa, and you've got like maybe a dozen or so homes in total destroyed, compared to volcano, 600 homes. Thank you, but I will take my chances with a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the difference is that the tornadoes are highly unpredictable, whereas like a volcano, when it erupts, there are very obvious places that'll be affected.
You've had 20
Yeah.
tornadoes in a day, whereas a volcano might go 100 years without going off.
True.
So you're wrong.
True.
You're wrong, Tensai.
Whatever. I'd
be
rather
worse.
not live under a ticking time bomb.
You could live in Hawaii.
It's guaranteed to hit me.
you could
Kind of
live in
like same thing
Florida.
with same thing
Or,
like with
just don't live in that area,
living
yeah.
in a hurricane prone area. If a hurricane's coming, you're gonna get hit. Period.
There was a great story a few years ago of I can't remember where it was. I think it was somewhere in Florida where they interviewed this lady this hurricane was coming towards this town, and it diverted at the last minute and went trashed some other town up the way. And they interviewed this woman for the first time and said, well, are you thankful for that the hurricane didn't hit you? Yeah, I think it was a divine intervention that God decided that we would be spared from the hurricane. It's like, you realise it completely trashed the town like a few miles up the way, right? But that town's gone now.
Yeah, it always irritates me when people talk like that.
Yeah, and you're like,
It's just like,
so God decided instead of trashing your town, he's going to go trash that town.
yeah, that sounds
Okay.
great.
Well, to be fair, they're cunts in that town over there. So
Yeah. They're a bunch of cunts anyway. They're all gay. It just made me laugh.
Yeah.
Speaking of not so natural disasters, I wanted to give you guys a quick update on Brexit. The government has been drawing up contingency plans for a no-deal Brexit, and this is going to sound like hyperbole, but this is genuinely what they are planning.
hyperbole.
Yeah. Hyperbole. You say
Hyperbole?
hyperbole. say
I mean, what is hyperbole? It sounds like the Super Bowl,
Well,
but hyper instead.
It's actually hyperbole is the correct term. I first heard of hyperbole through hyperbolic functions, it's a mathematical thing. So I've always called it hyperbole.
Michael, you're just wrong. Sad.
Anyway,
Okay. Whatever.
this is going to sound complete wild exaggeration, but this is genuine what they're planning in case of a no-deal Brexit. In case they reject it, they're looking at flying medication in and using the RAF to transport it around the country, because 80% of our drugs come from the EU. So
In case the plan's rejected, hasn't it already been rejected?
yes, but we've got until May to come up with something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, using the RAF to fly in medication and transport it around the country, using a 3-mile long stretch of the motorway as a lorry park, running out of petrol for fuel by the end of the second week, and using the army to distribute food. And I'm sitting there reading this like, why are we still doing it? Surely this is the point where you take a pause and you go, okay guys, let's just slow down a bit.
So
Why
there's
are
not
we
going to be
still
any food,
No,
no
Leave
medicine.
it on 3-speed and just keep watching everything go flying by and
Yeah.
then complain that it's going too fast.
Before we started this, Bree told me this. It's like a train wreck. It's not like a train wreck. It's like looking at being 50 miles back on the track, looking ahead and going, "We're gonna crash." Hey guys, should we pull the brake? Nah. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Woo.
Or just standing on the track in the distance and seeing the train coming, and it's like, guys, we should probably get off the track because there's a train.
we should move, guys. Train, guys. Train. We should really move. Train.
We could very easily just step off the track and avoid the train.
Even if they said, okay, let's extend the Brexit transition period so we got more time to come up with something, that'd be something, rather than, we just got the RAF fly medication around the country because, what? What? Are you insane?
And food, you said too? Are people going to be lining up on the streets to get their food rations or something? I mean, what is going on here?
I'd say no, but...
I'd say no? That's definitely not.
Well, the problem is, all of our trade deal comes from the EU. So we're saying we'll trade organisation rules, but you can't just transfer originally straight away. We'd have to...
Yeah, you can't.
So
there'd be a transition period where we have no trade agreement.
It's a logistics nightmare, is what it is.
Yeah. There'll be no system for trading at all in place between the UK and the rest of the world.
It's almost as if there could be a humanitarian crisis going on.
Yeah. So the mild case is if we just come up with some agreement quickly, to trade again. That would cost us a shit ton of money, but it at least mean the country doesn't.
Can you like a month
Syria.
before it happens? Can you just go to another country and then when they ask you the reason for your visit, just be like, "I'm a medical refugee and I don't want to die."
I mean, if they run out of medication, it might get to that point where I turn up in Sweden and go, "I need drugs."
I need my fix, man. He's gonna be shaking and scratching himself and stuff.
And like I say, it feels like an exaggeration. You feel like sure it can't happen for a first world country like the UK, but all of our trading links come through the EU. So if we cut them all off, there is just no system of trade in place. And if the EU decides to punish us for it, they can just cut off all our trade, and we're fucked.
See, and that's actually, it's amazing when you think about it, just how much first world nations rely on trade in order to be first world nations.
Mm-hmm.
So if all of a sudden they don't have any trade, all of a sudden they go straight to third world nations.
Yeah.
There's
probably worse because we're overpopulated.
Probably worse.
Because we're wildly overpopulated.
Something bad like this can't possibly happen. This is when the American stereotype guy steps in. He's like, "Hold my beer," and then
Yeah. So
trade war. Woo!
So yeah, we're making contingency plans which involves the RAF distributing food, and we're still doing this apparently. Don't ask me why. I don't know anymore.
Because reasons.
Because democracy.
Oh, but I've heard that it's going to be amazing. This wonderful sort of once we get away from, what was it that one guy said? The neoliberal EU will be able to have all these progressive policies and everything.
But the EU doesn't. There's a Lexit idea that the EU prevents us from socializing industries. That's not true, even slightly.
Yeah.
That's probably the Tories, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry.
Just that simple, I'd say.
Well, it's there's a claim that the EU prevents us from, nationalising the NHS. I'm like, but other EU countries have nationalised health services, or at least, public option health services.
And the NHS is already nationalised, isn't it? That's the point. Is they want to privatize it.
Yeah, it's being more privatised slowly over time.
Yeah, that's the Tories. The Tories want to privatize it. That's not coming from the EU. It has nothing to do with the EU.
So yeah, Brexit's going well.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Do you have anything for us, Chris?
Well, I was going to say, speaking of cunts, like you were saying earlier. We have a new asshole in the news. Well, maybe not a new asshole, but an old asshole just being an asshole again, as his nature, I suppose. There was this little event that happened in Thailand recently. I guess a soccer team of children and their coach went on a field trip or something like that. I guess it was like a field trip. I'm not sure exactly. But they got stuck in a cave that got flooded, and they were lost to everyone in Thailand for a while. When they finally found them, they were found in this cave system, completely cut off from the outside world and unable to get out. What happened was the Thailand government started pushing to get these children out. They got divers from all around the world, I think, come in and help out the effort. And Elon Musk happened to get involved. It's interesting how it works. It doesn't seem like, at least at first, that Elon Musk was doing this for like some kind of PR stunt. He didn't even seem like he was pushing himself into this on purpose or anything. It seemed like someone asked him if he could help, and then he was like, "Oh yes, I'll run to the rescue," and then like tried to make this little child-sized submarine thing, and help them out with that. And the aftermath of this, though, has been why he's an asshole now. The divers on hand thought that this was ridiculous, and they didn't want to use the submarine. They didn't want to... personally, I wouldn't use the thing either, because I wouldn't be gambling the lives of these children on this experiment of Elon Musk.
That's where what the divers team said eventually, that they couldn't use... Even if it worked, they couldn't use a untested submarine to rescue 17 children. I think it was 17 children?
12 children and their coach.
But they can't use an untested submarine for that. It's silly. They're going to use the traditional methods to get the kids out.
Yeah, but the real problem started though when one of the main divers commented on, I think it was CNN or a CNN interview about Elon Musk and his involvement with it. I do have a clip of it, of his response. Here it is, real quick.
What your thoughts on Elon Musk's idea was?
And stick his submarine where it hurts. Just had absolutely no chance of working. He had no conception of what the cave passage was like. The submarine, I believe, was about 5'6" long, rigid, so it wouldn't have gone round corners or round any obstacles. It wouldn't have made the first 50 metres into the cave from the dive start point. Just a PR stunt.
But he went into the cave on Tuesday.
And was asked to leave very quickly. And so he should have been.
All right, so in there, she asks him at first, like, what did he think about Elon Musk's plans with this submarine thing? And you heard his response. He was a bit dismissive, and I feel like he could have handled that better, let's say. He could have been a little bit more, civil in it.
Meh.
But
fuck civility.
I mean,
these are kids' lives we're talking about. You don't risk kids' lives with stupid, untested prototypes.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have either. If I were these divers, I would not be gambling the lives of these children on some experiment that Elon Musk wanted to try out.
The last thing they need is some oblivious rich person wandering around doing, "Do you want a submarine?"
Yeah, it's typical. This is a common billionaire thing. When they want to do charity, they want it on their terms. And if anyone says, no, there are laws and rules and regulations, they're like, fuck you!
Which gets us to the point of this. Elon Musk, after that interview went live and it was broadcast and everything, and hearing the guy dismiss him like this, Elon Musk went on to Twitter, where all thin-skinned billionaires go these days to vent and cry and bitch and moan about things.
Don't know who you're talking about that, Chris.
I don't know. It's weird. But he proceeded to call Mr. Unsworth, is the guy's name that was speaking there. He called him a pedo guy. So
Yeah, let's clarify. So he's the lead diver. One of the diver died in the rescue attempt. So serious risk to his own life. Rescued 12 kids and a coach from a cave in Thailand, and then comes out and Musk calls him a pedo. Classy, very classy, Musk.
yeah, I mean, it's not hard to think that this was also just this PR stunt, like he did say in that. From Musk, because this is what Elon Musk has done in the past. I mean, Elon Musk is the same guy that shot a fucking car into space just because he could.
Well,
I mean, that was a PR stunt, if nothing else, you know?
well, that part was, yes. I mean, he could have used anything for the counterweight.
But that one I don't mind so
But,
much,
yeah.
because at least it's
That was not a big deal because it was an actual
it's
specific
still-
test of a prototype.
It's still a PR stunt to put a car into space, though, you know? He could have done
wouldn't
something
you?
more useful with it.
that one is, but they had to use something for a counterweight. So yeah, let's use a car. We'll make it a PR thing. That's great. It's funny. It's fine. Using the rescue of a bunch of children as a PR stunt is a different thing entirely.
Yeah, you're
No, I
risking
know.
lives there.
No, I know. I'm just saying, though, it just shows like a pattern of him wanting PR more than anything else, though. You know, he does things for PR purposes. It's all I'm trying to point out there, you know. And this is Elon Musk, though, and it's really understandable for someone to, in some ways, be as like, you know, dismissive of him, you know, and just say, well, this is probably just some stupid PR stunt because this is who Elon Musk is. That's understandable, you know. What isn't understandable is Musk's, you know, his reaction to it and him calling the guy a pedophile because they wouldn't use his damn submarine. He's like a little petulant child, you know. Ugh. It's like every stereotype of a rich, bratty kid that you can think of right now, you know?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
he's
and he's a cunt.
getting his way, so
I'll lend you my British accent to say that.
yeah.
And he's a cunt. Yes, okay, yeah.
And you know what? I will go further than the lead diver there. I'll say that he can take his submarine and he can shove it up his fucking ass.
Can lend us your American
he just
accent
said
for
where it hurts. So he was
Yeah, I know.
he was flowering it a little bit, I suppose. You know.
Yes. He was avoiding swearing because he knew he was on TV.
Yeah. Hold on. Where's Musk's reaction here? I wanted to read it out for a second.
Fail.
Yeah. What the heck? It was right there, wasn't it?
So much fail.
Where the heck is it? Oh my goodness. Okay, here's a part of it. As this well-written article suggests, my words were spoken in anger after Mr. Unsworth said several untruths and suggested I engaged in a sexual act with the mini-sub, which had been built as an act of kindness and according to specifications from the dive team leader. He does go on after that. There was another tweet from him after that I can't find all of a sudden.
Or he's a little
It
more
was here.
apologetic.
Yeah, he does apologize
Sorry
in the
if he
second
offended you, but his little feelings were hurt.
part. His little fifis were hurt, yeah. But
There were
yeah,
some people
it's
telling
gone.
Musk he you can't just call any random person a pedophile like that. It's like,
Yeah.
well, actually, he kind of can. He's rich,
here it is.
and it's kind of a problem.
I found the second tweet. He says, nonetheless, his actions against me do not justify my actions against him, and for that I apologize to Mr. Unsworth and to the companies I represent as leader. The fault is mine and mine alone. So, I mean, he could have been the true asshole like Trump and not have apologized at all. You know, I guess we can give him
Let's
that
be honest, he
credit, I
apologized
suppose,
because
but,
he-
you know.
It's kind of not much
Meh.
of an apology.
Yeah, in some ways,
It's
yeah.
more
Like,
of
especially that first
attempting
tweet.
to avoid legal liability, the way it's
Yeah, and trying to repair some of the damage he took to his PR.
worded. Yeah.
Because his stocks went down,
Yeah.
didn't it? So that's probably what's happened more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like we're saying here, though, he's still kind of a dick. So it was a dick move to call the guy a pedophile, no matter what. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of time before we can actually, give this guy much anymore.
And besides, he
Because
just
of this.
said he can shove his submarine where it hurts. That doesn't specify a sexual act. He could have shoved it down his throat. That would hurt.
That
Into
could
his
be
ear.
construed as a sex act too by some people, but you know.
Well,
To be honest, if I ram a submarine into your chest, I don't know if that's going to hurt.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
just shove it anywhere, and it's not going to be pleasant.
Nope.
But yeah, that was that one. Elon Musk, kind of a douchebag.
Shall we
So,
move on to our main
Yes.
topic?
So, before we start this, I wanted to tell you where this topic comes from, because a couple of weeks ago, Jeremy Corbyn raised the issue in Parliament. Where was I? Okay. A couple of weeks ago, Jeremy Corbyn raised this issue in Parliament. He asked, every week in the UK we have what's called Prime Minister's Questions, where the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, as well as some of the minor parties, ask the Prime Minister questions about politics, whatever. And the media records them, Corbyn gets 6 questions, and he asked the Prime Minister about buses and the bus services. And the rich Tories and the middle class press sneered at him for it, like, buses aren't that important, rah, 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 rah. But in fact, they are. Millions of people rely on the buses every day to get to work and school and all this. They got to thinking that public transport is actually really important, and no one seems to care. Come on, Chris.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask you, was that the comment that I pulled earlier that we wanted to
Yes.
play here?
So Corbyn started off with a dig at David Davis, which, if you want to play that, Chris.
It's a really good one. Hold on. Got my phone. Here it is.
To be fair, and I want to be fair to the former Brexit Secretary and the former Foreign Secretary, I think they would have resigned on the spot on Friday. But they were faced with a very long walk, no phone, and due to government cuts, no bus service either. So, I think they were probably wise to hang on for a couple of days so they can get a lift home in a government car.
Okay.
Yeah, so David Davis and Boris Johnson resigned a couple of days after the Brexit bill came out. It turned out that they didn't resign at the spot because they wanted to get a lift home. And Corbyn's calling out because there would be a bus service home if the government hadn't cut the buses.
Weird.
Yeah.
Oh, also,
So-
there was another thing where you posted something earlier about like how the Tories have been cutting police forces too, and there's higher crime rates too. It's weird. It's almost
Yeah,
as
the
if,
Tories left scratching their heads as police numbers are a record low, police numbers per capita are a record low, but crime rates are going up, and they can't seem to work out the connection.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
It's almost as if you cut the funding to the police service, crime goes up.
Sounds similar to what Republicans do here to education, where like every time they cut education, they say, "You see that they don't work very well. These public schools are failing."
Yeah, it's all the teachers' fault.
Yeah, it's totally their fault. It's totally not the fault of these asshole politicians cutting funding or anything. Totally not that.
Yeah.
So, I want to make the point that public transport is kind of unappreciated. Do you guys ever get the buses?
I ride the bus almost exclusively, seeing as I do not have a car.
I've actually never taken public transport, I don't think. I've just never really been in an area where I can really take full advantage of it. And I've usually also had access to a vehicle of my own, so I've really never needed necessarily to take public transport. And as such, I've also been a little bit worried about taking public transport because I'm always like worried, like if I go onto like a bus or a train, I will like forget to get off at the right place and get lost or something like that. And it's just probably a stupid worry, but like worry nonetheless because I've just never done it, you know? I just don't have the experience of it.
It's not actually as difficult as you might think.
It probably isn't.
The first couple times you ride, you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping track of where you are, so you know to get off. But like after you know the route,
Actually,
you kind of know.
I do remember I drove up towards New York City a couple years back, and I did park in New Jersey, took a train into New York City that one time. That was like the only time I've ever done it. Even that, I was a little worried. Just probably unnecessarily, you know? Like, I probably overthink the thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, I took the train to DC. I took Amtrak from Southern Iowa to DC a couple years ago. Navigating the buses in Omaha was difficult.
Google Maps. So for us over here, all the buses are on Google Maps.
Yeah.
So you just do what it tells you to do.
Yeah, that was a bit more difficult there. I don't think when I was in Omaha, it was a bit more difficult because I don't think Google Maps was quite at that point yet. And then like when I went to Japan with my church group, we rode the subway there, as well as the Shinkansen, which was awesome. Barely even felt like you were moving. Which is the bullet train for those who don't know the Japanese name. And then when we went to England, so that was in 2011. We rode the train from Manchester to London, and then we rode the underground into London to get to the match, and we were there to see. So it was difficult.
I get buses all the time. I mean, it's one of the main forms of transport around here. So
yeah. When I
get
travel,
it.
I like to take public transport.
Yeah. You do it for free, aren't you? You're not going to find parking space and look after a car, and and you're not worried about drinking and stuff. I find it much easier. But yeah, you're not alone. Where's it gone? There we go. There's a lot of focus on trains in the UK, but for some reason we don't focus on buses, even though there's about 2.5 times more bus journeys than there are trains. So it's a really big industry, and a lot of people rely on buses to get around. A
well-planned system will have buses supplementing your train system.
Yeah. In the last
part of public transport
8 years, over in the UK, there's been a 182 million cut, 45% in public buses, which is huge. 45% cut in public buses, which means 3,300 routes have been altered. 77 routes have just been cancelled. Most of them being in the north of England.
Of course.
And of course, bus prices have risen 3 times faster than wages. What that means is, while the big profitable routes, relatively unaffected, so the big routes between cities, the poor routes out in the rural areas, they're the ones that get cut because, they can't really sustain themselves. They're the ones that need the support.
Yeah. Well, and that's a similar story to what happened with passenger rail here in the United States. Once they started pulling all the small rural town stops, you actually had much less people actually riding the rails. And then as a result, passenger rail service just kind of started dwindling and died.
Aye.
To the point where it had to be brought back as Amtrak, which is a government-private contract. It's like a public-private, whatever they call those.
Yeah, which brings my first point, really, that back in under Thatcher, we had a fully public bus system in most of the country. Under Thatcher, she basically privatised most of the buses, except for in London, which managed to avoid a lot of the privatisation. So we have a nice little comparison to make. If I can find my bleeding sources.
Sad.
I had all my sources up and I just realised I've
to
close them up.
Giving me crap for forgetting or missing the Elon Musk thing. And now we're in this.
Okay, hold on. I was the one giving you crap, not Michael.
It was Michael.
Clear there.
Don't lie. It was him.
I said I wouldn't give you crap. I said I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys probably heard about that. Trump changed his... What was your first reaction when you heard that? When you changed it? He says, oh, no, I said I wouldn't. I meant to say I wouldn't.
My first reaction was, of course he did. He flip-flops worse than any politician in existence.
Fake news.
I burst out laughing. on the floor just laughing like, fucking, yeah, that's what you're going with? That?
Yeah, well, and it's
Nice.
I figured he would change his story like within like a couple days or weeks or whatever, and probably do it on Twitter.
I knew there'd be a
Claiming
walk
that
back.
he never
but
said that. Because I mean, it's what Trump says is so it's almost inconsequential because he changes his mind so fucking often,
Yeah.
and it's just
So awesome? No, maybe not awesome, but.
whatever. I've been drinking Baileys, so
Uh-oh.
whatever. Or as my roommate and I like to call it, pureed babies.
Yeah, so since the buses are privatised, fares have risen 4 times faster than wages have increased. So that's significantly problematic. As I said, we've lost loads of bus routes across the country. And also, quality of the buses generally agreed to have decreased, although, of course, that's a bit more subjective. Some people say that the amount of people using buses has decreased, and that's has increased, and that's because of the privatisation. That's not actually true. What they did a while back was to combat the rising travel fares, rather than nationalise the buses again. They let pensioners use the buses for free, which, of course, is a huge subsidy for those private companies. Huge subsidy, and also increased the rate of bus use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm in a college town. Everyone who attends Iowa State University will use the bus for free.
Yeah, so it's a massive subsidy for a private company, which is a bit problematic. They also get fuel subsidies and tax subsidies and all sorts to keep them going. I don't know why they just nationalise them.
Well, I know why. They make a lot of money off those subsidies.
Yeah, and
the service itself doesn't have to be profitable so long as they're actually making a profit via both the fares and the subsidies.
Whereas, down in London, of course, the buses are still pretty cheap and quite well managed. Their fares haven't risen nearly as fast, and the quality hasn't changed all that much either. So it's interesting to have that side-by-side comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've lost one of my sources.
But, yeah, and I mean, what happens is as you decrease service, you're going to get less people riding because they're not going to be able to get to where they need to go. I mean, and that's actually something that they found recently in the city I live in, because they recently just revamped the bus system to make it so that certain routes are actually running much more often. And all of a sudden they're getting more people riding it because you can actually take the bus all day now, rather than for a tiny portion in the morning and then a tiny portion in the evening and then it's gone.
Yeah. Recently up here they cut the night buses. So when I was my first year as a student, the night bus ran Thursday midnight till 3 a.m. and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They cut that now, so it's just Saturday these days. I think Friday as well. Which is actually more problematic than you think, because it costs about 15 quid for me to get a taxi from Manchester to my house. £15, sorry, quid. It's an English thing. About £15. And if that bus is on, it was free because I got a weekly bus ticket. That's quite significant. That's more on a student's, income. That's £15. So it means I could go out for a night out in town and come back out. And that's only a minor one. One of the points I wanted to make is that it shouldn't be thought of as an optional thing. Buses actually allow people to get around when they couldn't otherwise. So, for example, school buses, especially in rural areas where a school district might be very large indeed, several hours drive across. You'll probably know this better than I will, Badger.
Yep.
Because we don't really have school buses here. They might be in some places, but we don't really have them.
I remember the school bus for our school district. We'd get on the bus about an hour before school started. And then we'd get there literally with 5 minutes till school started.
Yeah. Oh, I saw this documentary.
And ours wasn't even the longest bus route that we were on either.
Yeah, I saw this documentary. This guy was saying he drives 100 miles a day on the school buses.
Yeah.
To pick up kids, and without that, a lot of those kids will simply not be able to get to school. And so it's not an optional thing of how are they going to get to school, or they're going to use the buses because it's the best way. If they didn't have that bus, they simply wouldn't be able to get there.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, elderly or disabled people or people who just can't afford a car, it's the same. They need the buses because that's the only way of getting around.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we see this actually here because there's a lot of times, like after an ice storm or like a really heavy snowstorm, the buses will only run on paved surfaces. So anyone who lives on a gravel road, they're not going to be able to take the school bus. And so a lot of them simply just can't go to school all those days.
Yeah.
Because, unless their parents can take them. But a lot of times, I mean, most people, they leave for work before their kids even go to school or, catch the bus.
So back to my point, it's easy for the middle class and the rich to say, oh, buses, they're not an important issue. A lot of middle class journalists who, like I say, are mostly from privileged backgrounds. And of course, politicians who are all millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for them to say, well, buses aren't important, but actually, they're kind of central to a lot of people's lives. And they should really be thought of as a public service, much like any other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Which is why they should be nationalized.
It's also a factor of our society today, too. Like, things aren't like they were back in, like, the 1800s, where, like, your school was, like, just your little tiny town, We have, like, massive areas that are, covered by, like, a school district, which have schools in very specific places. And, yeah, you have to go miles to get to them sometimes, like you were saying.
That's a constant thing here, and especially in a lot of the larger Midwestern states, and probably also in a lot of Western states as well, and in the Rocky Mountains, is you'll have a lot of rural school districts basically consolidating. And as a result, students have to travel longer and longer to get to school. I was reading about the kids who live in the Northwest Angle in, north of Lake of the Woods in Minnesota. You know how Minnesota has that little jut up? Well, that's the Lake of the Woods, and there's actually the Northwest Angle right up there. It's a piece of land. The only part of land that it's connected to is Canada. So these kids, there's not enough kids there. It's to actually justify any large school investment or anything. So they have a one-room schoolhouse, the last one-room schoolhouse in the United States up there. And that's for kids up to 6th grade. And then after 6th grade, they have to ride a bus, and I think it's almost 2 hours through Canada and then back into the United States to go to school in a town that's about 20 minutes away from the border, the Canadian border in the United States.
That's mental.
Because that's actually the closest school to them. Even if they were to go to school in Canada, in a Canadian school, they would have to drive further.
Yeah. But, I mean, not even just for schooling, though. Like, we need public transport because there are people that just don't live near where they work, and especially, like, if you have, like, a specific job. Like, there are people that work in D.C. that live in New Jersey. And trying to drive there every day is going to be madness. That's just going to be stupid. So you would take a train instead because it's going to be faster, it's going to be easier, and it's better for
Joe
people.
Biden was known for taking the train from, was it Delaware to D.C. to work?
Might be. Corbyn over here is known for getting the train because most of the politicians obviously get the train to sit in the first class, and Corbyn's known for sitting in the...
Which, mind you, on the eastern seaboard in the United States, there's pretty damn good train coverage. Because, quite frankly, you'd have nothing but complete gridlock if there wasn't.
Yeah, we have a large...
Too many people living in the Northeast,
There's a large line of, like, very, very large cities over here. So there's D.C., there's Baltimore, there's Philadelphia, there's New York City, New
York City,
and
Boston.
Boston, yeah. And so all of those are... You can just draw a line between them, and it's easy. That's what our train system is for, pretty much.
The northeastern seaboard is one of the most densely populated portions of the United States.
Absolutely.
One of.
That in California and...
and then Chicago's pretty densely populated as well. But, I mean, Chicago's the third largest city. So... But New York City is the largest city.
Allegedly.
Which does actually bring me on to the point I was going to make next, which is, so buses are great for getting around the city. They're quite big, they're quite slow, they're quite a lot of people, and they're fairly fuel efficient considering the when you consider they can carry like 100 people.
They're also a little bit more dynamic and in their routes too. If you need to change the routes of the buses,
you can take a detour.
Yeah, you just need to stick a sign there, and it's a bus stop.
Yeah, we've got a ton of those going on right now here in town.
Yeah. But if you want to travel between cities, buses are kind of shit because they're really, even a coach, they're really slow.
And it's also like from a
and if there's an accident or rush hour traffic, it's going to slow it down even more.
There's also
better would be a train to get between cities. They're much faster.
Yeah.
There's more efficiency in it too, and there's less wear and tear on the vehicles. Whereas a bus has tires and brakes and all of these other things that wear and tear all the time. Well, the trains have some of that too, but
Yeah, but he's right though. Trains tend to be more reliable over long distance.
Yes.
Just because they're more steel.
Yeah, it's more steel. And also with trains, if you need more to be able to fit more people on a train, you can just add another car.
Yeah, to a limit, yeah.
Well, to a limit. I mean, depending on how many engines you have. But yeah, I mean, and especially passenger trains, they're really light, especially when you compare them to like freight trains, which I see all the time through here.
I've seen a few trains around in the Philly area that are like 1 or 2 cars in length, so they can get pretty small,
Yeah, and of course, the smaller the train, the faster it can go.
Yeah,
but of course, you're going to have different regulations regarding how fast they can go. I mean, there was that horrible train wreck was it Philadelphia, where he took the curve too fast and derailed pretty bad?
Yeah, there was one of those a few years ago, I think.
Yeah,
they happen once in a while here and there.
Yeah.
Well, light rail trams, they can be just like one car with 100 people in it. A big train, obviously. Trains gain their most efficiency when they're bigger, because obviously each carriage is behind the next one, so they gain from. They don't have to cut through the air.
Wind resistance and
And also, once the train's going, it doesn't actually take that much energy to keep it going.
Yeah, and
so heavy rail's really what trains are good at.
Yeah, and I mean there's been some efforts to try to bring light passenger rail. I mean, Wisconsin was working on a plan for light passenger rail. Unfortunately, the previous governor, I forget his name, he wasn't able to actually get it going before he got out of office. He had it all approved, they'd bought everything, but they hadn't actually started working on it. And then Scott Walker got in, and he pretty much just canceled the whole thing, so they literally lost millions. Because it wasn't the kind of thing that they could just resell, because for some reason they decided to buy their trains from Italy, so it had a different gauge track, which meant you couldn't just sell it to people locally.
That's really stupid.
You had to literally send it back to Italy. So yeah, that was stupid. But
Scott Walker being stupid? I couldn't have seen that coming.
Yeah, I know. Well, and we had high-speed rail approved here in Iowa. Chuck Culver approved it. But then, the mustache got in. I mean, Governor Branstad, and he just nixed the whole thing, which was really frustrating.
I wanted to mention, in America especially, England too, but America especially, you guys need high-speed rail.
Oh, yes, we do.
Really badly.
And we need to fucking maintain our tracks.
And that. And you need that, what was it called, the control?
Positive train control.
Yeah,
PTC.
You need that as well. That's the safety thing.
It's, in theory, the regulation goes into effect, is it the end of this year? I think it's the end of this year. But, of course, that regulation was supposed to go into effect in 2015. And Lipinski was instrumental in helping his daddy, who is now a lobbyist for the train industries, in Lipinski, by the way, the guy running against the actual Nazi in Illinois' 3rd District. He was instrumental in delaying PTC, which would have prevented not only that crash in Pennsylvania that I was talking about earlier, where the guy took the corner too fast and derailed the train, but also the more recent train crash in was it Washington? It wasn't this last Christmas, was it?
Yeah,
or was it the Christmas before?
There was one recently, but I can't remember where it was.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember, but yeah, it was that brand new Cascadia line. Amtrak Cascadia line. And if they'd had PTC installed, that would never have happened because PTC prevents you from going above the speed limit.
Yeah.
And for that section
That's
of
taking
track.
away freedom.
So, but yeah, you do need high-speed rail. The thing is, a high-speed rail, it needs to be built. It's the track needs to be better maintained and better built, because obviously if it's a small bump in a low-speed rail, it's less of a thing. Whereas a high-speed rail, if you take a small bump,
Yeah.
and the corners
Well,
need to be less sharp, you can't turn as quickly if you went too fast.
And I mean, there's a lot of sections of track in the United States that are just in really horrible disrepair.
Yeah, I saw someone on a documentary I watched.
Yeah, I'd recommend just looking up, just Googling, poor track in the United States or something like that, and just taking a look at railroad track, I guess, and just taking a look at some of the YouTube videos. I mean, and you can see them, the trains are just crawling and they're like basically wobbling side to side as they're going at like 5 miles per hour down this piece of track that looks like
side to side is less problematic than some of them. There was one where the deviation in height's like maybe half a foot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going up and down like this, and you're like, fucking hell.
Yeah,
and the trains are crawling over it like fuck.
Yeah, the on the Capital Limited line between Chicago and Washington D.C. as it goes through West Virginia, which is a good chunk of the way. We were not going very fast because that track was in such very poor condition that they had to really slow down in order to not derail. And I actually got seasick or motion sickness on it because the train was rocking so badly on that section.
Yeah, so high-speed rail, it does bring a couple of benefits. So one is obviously you can get your goods out to market quicker.
Yep.
Which is beneficial, gives you a better economy. You can access further markets, so you can sell your goods further away.
Which is why freight, rail, whatever you call it, freight trains are immensely profitable right now.
Yeah. For a while, trucks took over.
We'll see.
For a while in the UK, trucks took over and freight rail went out of fashion, but coming back now because of a few advancements.
Yeah, I don't think
specifically electrification.
Freight never really declined at all in the United States.
I'd imagine not because the distances are so much bigger.
Yeah, and especially going up and over the mountains and stuff, like the Rocky Mountains and through the Appalachians. You're going to use so much less fuel going by train, with a huge load than you would with the truck.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like when we had we have issues with like oil and fuel movement and everything and how we should transport and everything. Usually train seems to be the better option than truck because, you need so many trucks comparative to how many trains you need. Like one train can hold as much as like fucking like a fleet of trucks,
In terms of environmental damage, if I remember correctly, trains were the least environmentally damaging way of transporting it. Don't quote me on that.
Well, and that's largely because you're able to transport so much more.
Yeah, so much more, and the accident rate.
I mean, you're going to use more fuel. I mean, if you've ever been anywhere near a large diesel train engine, those things are huge.
Oh, yeah.
And they have like multiple 100-gallon tanks of diesel fuel. So they're huge. They use a lot of fuel. But considering how much they're transporting, I mean, like I see trains going by all the time with actual semi-trailers on their trailers, like on the trains, and it's just, I could probably count. I don't even know how many. Well over, probably at least 50, at least, on one train.
Probably more than that.
Well, probably more than that, but
really
usually
big.
There's more than just those kinds on there. Usually there's also like cargo containers, shipping containers. There's usually a bunch of coal hoppers, what are they called? Tanker cars, usually box cars, reefer cars.
Yeah. Also, if you got what they call perishable goods, you can get them further away because they're faster.
Yeah.
There's
actually one that goes from California, Northern California, to Chicago, and or actually it goes all the way to New York City, but it kind of has to change lines in Chicago, and they have to get there within a certain number of days, or else the food will spoil.
Yeah.
So they're a high priority train, and they actually get through there in less time than it would take to drive that same distance.
Yeah, because trains are faster.
Nothing but interstates, because it's faster.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so I wanted to move on if we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just one little thing about
Go on then.
Like, planes would also not be a very ideal situation either. It would seem like planes would be faster, which they probably would be, but they use a lot more fuel as well. And
they deposit that fuel quite high in the atmosphere as well.
Yeah.
So it's very damaging.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be a great option either.
I've deliberately not given planes much love because they're very profitable, like really profitable. So they don't really need the extra attention.
Yeah, well, and I think also a plane can't really transport as much as a train can. There are literally mile-long trains that travel carrying goods across this country.
They are an important part of freight and passenger transport.
And passenger transport. I think, that too, more specifically. But there's the day one delivery and stuff with planes and the overnighting. But generally, most people don't actually opt for those options, other than like companies. And it's more expensive for a reason.
Planes cost, when you're delivering something, planes cost per weight. So if you've got something that's big, takes a lot of space, but doesn't weigh very much, it's good to transport by plane because it doesn't cost very much. If you've got something, whereas boats, they can take as much weight as you want. It's space, so they charge by space.
Yeah.
So sometimes
it's
cheaper
too.
Sometimes it's cheaper to transport. Sometimes it's cheaper to transport by plane because you've got something big but light, or things that are time sensitive, like you say, deliveries to customers.
Yeah.
So cars are transported by plane sometimes, expensive cars.
Yeah, and we used to transport our mail. The United States Mail Postal Service, USPS, used to use the trains for everything. I recently was up at Green Bay, and we went to the National Train Museum, where they had an old U.S. Postal Service train car there. And you walk through, and you could actually see how they sorted the mail, and
Oh, do you not still?
And all that.
I suppose it's distance is a problem again. Because over here, they just slap a mail car, a postal car onto the back of a passenger train. If it's going from London to Glasgow.
Yeah, that's what they used to do. They don't do that anymore. I've seen UPS trailers on trains. I don't think I've ever seen a USPS, although I'd be surprised if they don't take trains. But it's a. I really think it would probably
before
be
we run out of time,
if they did that.
I would like to talk about why the US doesn't have great public transport. I think it's important to get to, and after that we'll probably wrap it up. So why doesn't the US have great public transport? So there's a couple of demographic reasons. One, for example, being that the US has a very low population density, so it's hard to have a profitable public transport system. If you've got a big city with 10 million people on it, you have public transport in there, it can be very profitable. Because one bus stop might be in range of 1,000 people. Whereas if you've got a village with 100 people in it, it's not going to be as profitable. So that's one reason. It's perfectly legitimate. Another one's the way in Europe, a lot of the cities are denser in that they tend to build upwards rather than outwards, just because there's less space. The countries are smaller. Whereas in the US, because there's so much space, they've gone out. So you end up with cities like 100 kilometers end to end. Maybe not singular cities, but urban areas that are just massive. And so it's harder to have a profitable bus or a train route in there, just because the distance involved. Again, it's less dense, so it makes things more difficult. Another one, weather. You have much more harsh weather than lots of Europe.
Tornadoes.
I think that one's a bit. Yeah, I think that one's a bit hit or miss because
we're kind of used to it though. Because we live here.
That's what I mean. I think that's kind of hit or miss. I know it would be an extra cost you've got to deal with. Your rail line gets hit by a tornado out in Iowa somewhere, and so
But I mean,
Gotta go
like,
fix it.
that's something we kind of already deal with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of procedures already in place for when there's a tornado or, you know, they'll
That's what
shut
I mean.
down
So I'm
certain
a bit
lines when
hit or miss on that
hurricanes
reason, but
coming.
that's what the article says.
You know.
Another one. Now it labels this a part of American culture, but I can't help but thinking that this is actually deliberate propaganda, marketing, let's call it. The idea of the American dream, that Americans are free and own their own car with a large house. And I can't help but think that that's more marketing
Oh, definitely.
than anything else. Like, it might be part of the culture, but I think it's a deliberate part of the culture.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that
People
you
make
should
money
own a
off
car to be free, which, all right.
Yeah, that's.
But another one, the one I actually want to talk about, is something called the General Motors streetcar conspiracy. And this was a thing that happened back in... When?
I don't know. Tell us, Michael.
Huh, it doesn't have a date.
Not winning.
Okay, well, sometime in the past, when cars were coming about, 1950s, there we go, when cars were becoming more common in America. 50, that seems really late. Never mind. Don't take that time with a grain of salt.
Sad.
Cars were becoming more popular in America, but they had a pretty robust public transport system, the streetcar. It's, from what I can tell, a light rail. So it's just essentially a small car on a rail which transports people around.
Most cities in America had, and even small towns had streetcars.
Yeah. So is it on the right there? Is a light rail?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened is there was competition between the public transport system and these car manufacturers who were coming up. This started with some weird marketing, like and trying to paint streetcars as unsafe, or starting this idea you should be free and own your own car and be able to travel where you want. And eventually, this sort of escalated. So after a while, companies like General Motors would hire gangs to essentially go and vandalize these streetcars. Yeah, and just terrorize people. Eventually, this culminated in General Motors and a few other car companies just buying the streetcar lines outright and then shutting them down.
Yep.
Which, when
I
you
believe
think
this was in about the 1950s and 60s.
Was it 50s? Okay. Which, when you think about it, they bought a public service and just shut it down. And how is that legal? I mean, presumably they bought the politicians too. But...
Well, yeah, that's one of the main things. Is they made sure they paid off politicians so that politicians wouldn't intervene and be like, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there's always been a streak of not having nationalized services in the United States.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when you talk about the robber barons of the 19th century, included in there is a lot of passenger train services and other stuff like that. A lot of public services that were essentially very privatized and then became basically monopolies in their areas. And they did this all over the United States.
Yeah.
And usually, either they were good friends with the politicians, donated to the politicians, or sometimes even they were the politicians.
That's true.
During that period anyway. There was, for I think a long time in several states, senators were actually appointed by governors. That was why direct election of senators was such a big deal.
I always forget you guys didn't always have that.
Yeah. And...
I'm sure some of it, though, was like, people just wanted to drive a car and get straight to the destination.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Go around, but...
Especially if you lived kind of out in the middle of nowhere, that allowed you to drive around near where you lived.
Yeah.
Or drive to the train station to catch a train to somewhere else in the country. But, a lot of our national parks, Yellowstone in particular, they had a train stop there. And people would come from all over the country by train to go to Yellowstone.
And they don't anymore.
Takes too long nowadays.
Yeah, a lot of it was just like these streetcars got bought out and...
That too. But, I mean, they, when they really started, once they started taking away the local part, then it really kind of expanded out. And so, well, these people can drive. So, we can drive and we don't have to buy tickets or worry about the train schedule or anything or how we're going to get around, when we get there.
Yeah.
Because there's no local public transportation.
That's the point as well. If there's no local transportation on the other end, then...
Yeah, so... Yeah. It's kind of one of those things.
But then you end up with a situation where there's no public transport, and so everyone has a car. And then city planners started designing cities, assuming that everyone has a car. So you end up with these suburbs where they're, you might have 20 kilometers where there's nothing near you. There's more houses.
They're very inefficiently designed.
They're horribly designed. I was looking at something off. There'd be like one way in and out of the suburb, and the shop on the other side of that. So if you're inside there, you have to navigate your way out of this maze just to go to the shop.
Yeah,
that's idiotic.
Mm-hmm. And
Completely
it's
idiotic.
Yeah, I mean, and the part of me that's been playing City Skylines just sits there and cries when I look at our city design, because I'm like, why would you design such a horrible a horrible plan? It's just...
It sounds silly. Yeah, that's kind of a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with city design and stuff is that it happens over long stretches of time. So it's not like necessarily that all the planning happens at once,
Like the older cities and stuff, they were laid out in a grid. And you can always tell when you're moving from an older portion of a city to a new portion of city, because all of a sudden your streets go from straight to weirdly curvy and really inefficient with their space.
Ironically, it's different here. It's the other way around here. The older parts of cities, generally what happened is literally like an old donkey track or something that got used and ended up being
that has to do with the history of the location. I mean, out here it was the Homesteader Act, so everything was like basically sectioned off into like square miles. Oh. So, it was literally all sectioned off that way.
Yeah, but the newer parts of cities, like the area I'm in was built in the late 1800s, where there was a big mill nearby built, and the mill obviously needs lots of workers. It's like a 5-story factory thing. Been demolished now, but that's what it was. It got demolished a couple of years ago. A big 5-story factory over there, and of course that needs loads of workers, because back then there's no machines. It's just labour. So to house all the workers, they built a huge area of residential. One of these houses, which I live in. Cheap houses, kind of small, but they do the job. And they're all arranged, not in a grid, but at least in neat rows, generally, following the land as much as they can.
Yeah.
Whereas the much older parts of the towns, especially in town centres, they tend to be a bit more swiggly. Because, like I say, it is just like an old donkey track that's turned into a road.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, what was it? Boston, they let basically the cattle pick where the roads were, because basically where the cattle would trample down all the grass on the way to their favorite places to eat and drink, get their water. They're like, okay, we'll put a road down there. It's the easiest place to put a road because cattle's already trampled it.
Yeah. Did that work?
But that was like back in the 1600s or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, so I mean, and of course that's also why city planning is very different in the oldest parts of the country as opposed to the newer parts of the country. And yeah, I mean, and particularly here in the Midwest, we had the Homesteader Act, which sectioned everything off in neat grids. And we really like our grids because it's very nice. Because, if you miss your turn, there's another road where you can just circle the block. You're not lost.
You can see the boundary between different parts of the town as well, so one guy built this residential area, another one built this residential. There'll be a boundary, where the neat roads will kind of come in at weird angles. It's quite funny. You can clearly see it. To point out to you sometime.
Yeah. And it was... I don't know. We were complaining about city planning and how it's inefficient.
And how they do it assuming you have cars, so then the people in the suburbs are stuck with their cars because there's no other way to get around.
Yeah.
Fortunately, a lot of cities, especially city centres, are moving. Even America are moving towards the idea of a pedestrian-friendly city, where essentially you have no cars at all in the city centre, just buses, taxis, and commercial vehicles.
Yeah.
And public transport, rail, light rail.
Well, and
Subways.
There's a bit of a battle going on here in Ames right now because certain portions of Lincoln Way, the old Lincoln Highway, runs through the city I live in. And basically they want to rezone it to make it more pedestrian friendly. Well, there's of course a developer involved who wants to basically buy up all the land and build it and basically own all the property for rent. So there's some nice little corporatism in there. But as it is, I mean, like we walk down through there all the time. Those sidewalks are treacherous. They're narrow. They're poorly kept up. I mean, there's actually a section along there where it's practically gone to gravel. It's been so poorly cared for. And,
there's a good example in
constantly
London.
have to watch your feet.
Oxford Road in London, which is the most densely packed street I have ever been on. There must be hundreds of thousands going down that street. It's one of the main shopping streets in London. And there's a road going up the middle of it. And what Sadiq Khan, I believe, wants to do at the moment is get rid of that road, divert the traffic onto the side roads around it, and just open the whole road up as a pedestrian thoroughfare, which would help it a lot because it's just two sidewalks, pavements on either side where all the people are. You walk down, and literally on one side of the path, there are all people going one way, and on the other side of the path, all the people going the other way. You just join it and you're not walking on as much as you're getting pushed by the sheer crowd, and you join it and just hop off when it's your time to get, when the shop comes along, you want.
Well, and especially in like old cities like London, where city street widths were originally intended for like pedestrians to begin with.
Yeah, horse and cart.
And with the occasional carriage going by.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you put cars in there, and that's extremely
it's a single
narrow
lane of traffic.
streets.
It's
mad,
absolutely mental. But yeah, they want to turn the whole thing into a big pedestrian thoroughfare and divert the traffic around.
Seems like a decent idea to me.
It's a really good.
Of course, I look at London's layout and I have no idea how anybody can figure out how to get around there. I was like constantly staring at the map while I was there. I was like, okay, we need to get to here. All right, I'm going to take this.
Google
We're
Maps.
going to get there. We're going to get off here.
When I'm navigating London, it's Google Maps.
Yeah. It was especially funny because I was with a friend of mine, and because I won some tickets to go to some football games or soccer games for Americans, so I was figuring out, like I was navigating, figuring out how to get where I was going, and she was just kind of staring at the map with like basically like the anime swirly eyes, like she was so lost. And I'm like, no, we need to go here. And
I love it.
Must have been a fun place before Google Maps and GPS and stuff,
Ask for directions.
Well, and I couldn't actually, because I was in another country, I actually couldn't use Google Maps because I couldn't get a data signal because I was roaming the entire time. So it was only when I had a Wi-Fi signal that I could hop onto, that I could actually use my phone. So I was using paper maps.
Oh, wow.
That's always fun.
Yeah. I mean, that was also back in
OS?
2011. I have no idea if that would be the case now, but yeah.
Things are probably a little bit better at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, U.S. cell phone network suddenly into Europe, I mean, I have no idea if it will work at all. And probably if it does work, they're going to charge me an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assume there's something you can pay for to get your phone to work in Europe.
Expensive as fuck. Might as well just, if you're going to be there a long time, might as well just buy a phone there in Europe, like one of those cheap prepaid phones or
as
something.
part of the EU, I can take my phone into Europe anytime.
Yeah.
Because our cell network.
For now.
Interchangeable.
Yeah,
I'm going to take my phone down to play and it works.
you got a little less than a year left, Michael.
I'm going to die, aren't I? So
We're all gonna die.
Yeah, that's everything I wanted to get through. Do we have any thoughts?
Trains are awesome.
Trains are kind of awesome.
I'm a train nerd. We're working on building a model train set.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. When you started talking about trains earlier, I thought, oh my god, here we go.
I mean, she does come from Iowa, so I mean, what else is there to do other than build train sets? You know.
It's not you can go into the city with 27,000 people.
We're also going to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've never played before, so
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm told actually told that's kind of fun.
yeah. Well, I grew up, fundy family, it's demonic and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of that chick track where they did Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
Nope.
And then there was a movie that someone made based off of it, and people couldn't figure out whether it was like in earnest or if they were making fun of it. Because it was so ridiculous. It was really funny.
Yeah.
It was really bad. It's like the perfect Poe where you honestly can't tell if they're being honest or if they're making fun of them.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to actually play another pen and paper game like that. It was actually called Vampire the Masquerade. And I went to this school.
I heard of that.
Yeah, I went to this school, and the principal confiscated my book. And, like, they told my parents that this was, like, demon worshipping and stuff. And, like, they were trying to get my parents to, like, punish me for it. They were just like, yeah, give us the book back. Fuck you. And they just gave it back to me. So we're like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah. But going off actually back to our public transport thing. So I posted on Facebook that, I was like, hey, we're going to start getting into D&D. I was like, problem is, it's not really a 2-player game. So I was like, anyone nearby who plays or anything like that? And then, so my friend who lives in Des Moines messaged, oh, hey, I've got a group you could join. We meet in West Des Moines once a week. And I was kind of like, that's great. I have no way to get to West Des Moines. It is literally a half hour from where I live.
What you could do...
I can't get there.
There's a website called meetups.com, I think it is, and you might be able to start a meetup group through that.
I'm sure there's a group on campus.
You can find something, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, but it was just kind of like, yeah, because I don't know how many times. So there is technically a bus that goes from Ames to Des Moines. That would be Jefferson Lines, which is kind of like Greyhound, but just specifically in the Midwest. They go from Ames to Des Moines at 6 a.m, and then they come back from Des Moines at 11 p.m. at night. That's it.
That's really shit.
Yep.
Well, the coaches to London go with the hour.
Nobody takes them for specifically that route.
That's another problem with
our
our...
coach from Manchester to London every hour.
Yeah.
I mean, every hour, like a whole day. I've been on the 1am one once. It was painful. Cheap. Yeah, it was 20 quid there and back.
I bet it was cheap.
Yeah.
20 quid there and back. Really good.
That's definitely a weakness of our public transport here. Is just like some of the ways you can go, you just can't do that practically on a daily basis.
And also,
or something,
so Amtrak runs through the California Zephyr, which is the Amtrak line that goes from Chicago to, I think it's San Francisco, and vice versa. It runs through Ottumwa, Iowa, which is directly south of me, probably about an hour and a half away. So if I wanted to go there, I'd have to take that 6 a.m. bus, and then it would go south, and it would drop me off in Ottumwa probably about 8 o'clock? And then the train comes through, so I'd get there just about in time to catch the train going east to Chicago. And then if I were to come back, so the train drops us off about 5. Well, the bus leaves Ottumwa at 4 p.m. So I would have to spend the night in Oskaloosa and then come north in the morning. Or not Oskaloosa. Sorry, Ottumwa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. A poor public transport system can actually limit your options in life in general.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when I took the train before, I didn't have a car then either. I actually had my dad drop me off, and that was when I lived in Des Moines. He dropped me off and he picked me up. You know.
Yeah. So anyway, I think
I
think we're best off wrapping up there.
So.
Chris?
Yeah, I didn't really have much else to add on here. There was a point that I wanted to make a while back, but I totally forgot it. But other than that, I can't think of much else to add here. It was probably not super important anyway. Who cares? But you know. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty important thing, having public transport. You know, like there are people in this this eastern pipeline here over on the East Coast that live in like New Jersey or New York, and they travel all the way to DC or something, like I said earlier, and they would never be able to do that without public transport. And if there were more places where you can go more regularly, like in your case, Aubrey, where there's that one line, you can't do it other than like twice a day, right, or something like that. It only runs that twice a day.
The California Zephyr goes east at about 8 or 9 in the morning, and then it goes west at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah,
4 or 5 in the afternoon.
That's really not going to help enough people do anything. So it's really not practical for most people to use that, unless it really just aligns with that. So if there were ways that we can like expand our public transport to be a little bit more frequent in those areas, it's just the problem would be it probably wouldn't be profitable enough anymore, unfortunately.
Well, and the most frustrating thing for me is there's actually a train station in town, like literally like a 15-minute walk from where I live in downtown Ames, that used to actually get passenger rail. And it was the primary line between Omaha, Nebraska, and Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
It's owned by Union Pacific now, and they run freight on it. I mean, it is still the primary line. There's a lot of lines that meet up in Omaha, and there's a hell of a lot of lines that meet up in Chicago, because they're nice central locations in where they are.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
I sort of remember I was gonna like mention the fact that like here in the United States there are like our track system is kind of convoluted because there's specific tracks owned by specific companies. So there's like hundreds of different tracks in some parts of the country. It's just like it's too convoluted. There's just too many tracks, and
because
if
we
they
have
could
private railroads.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Amtrak uses the old BNSF line to go out to California.
Yeah, but if they could somehow like cut it down and be a little bit more efficient with it, that would also be a helpful thing as well. But yeah,
which mind you, the private railroad lines actually means a monopoly. Union Pacific has a monopoly on pretty much the vast majority of the West Coast. You know, so
we gotta get out of here. Michael's getting upset.
I could go on all day about trains. I have very strong feelings.
He's sending us rude text messages. So.
I'm like, guys, it's like 1 a.m. Can
I guess we'll stop.
Fine.
If you say so.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
We'll see you next week, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, I should probably open up. Where is it? I lost my mouse. Where is it? Okay, there it is. Oh.